Good morning, and thanks for tuning in to episode 12 of the What's Your 20 podcast. I'm your host, EPD Special Projects Coordinator Taylor Maris, and joining me this week is Narcotics Sergeant Shellie King. Welcome.
Welcome. So,
I'm anxious to have you on the show. I think you're the first female that we've had on the show.
That's exciting. I was the first female around, I feel like, for a while, so I'm used to that feeling.
I bet, and we'll get to that here in a little bit, but tell us a little bit about you and where you grew up and just things about you.
I was born and raised here, went to North High School. Kids went to the same schools that I graduated from, so grew up with a father in law enforcement. A couple brothers did the same, and I was the last.
So how many brothers did you have in law enforcement? Two. And they all wore brown. They worked for county.
They did.
And your dad was at county.
Yes.
So how did that transpire in a house full of men going to county, and then you're here in blue in city?
At that time, he was my boyfriend then, but my current husband was also a deputy. There were a few reasons, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I did a couple ride-alongs with both city and county whenever I became interested, and county is a whole different world.
Sure.
Yeah. Orientation was huge.
Oh, really?
Yes. They had road map books that they followed. We didn't have computers or GPSs in our cars.
How long have you been on?
It'd be 22 years. And so,
okay.
Yeah, so we didn't have GPSs, so you just had to know where you were going.
Right.
So there were times that a county run would be dispatched that I would literally feel like I was in a different city.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I just, and then there was also the fact of, I mean, I'm a female. I'm
right.
small. Physically, most men are stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did get into a scuffle or started getting my butt whooped, I didn't want to have to wait 25 to 30 minutes
Absolutely.
for backup to come help me. As opposed to in the city, I would have to hold my own for 30, 45, a minute to work in South Sector, which is...
Yeah. Which that kind of leads to my next question, skipping ahead a little bit here in my little agenda. But as a female, I feel like you've always been very well respected on our agency by males and females alike. And I think that's something that's extremely important, especially when there's so few of us, to be well respected. And how is that something that you think you were able and still are able to accomplish?
I don't know if it has something. I grew up with, my two brothers and my dad, and I feel like a lot of people would say the same thing about my dad,
mm-hmm.
really. He always tells you, you respect everybody until there's a reason not to respect them or until they give you a reason. I tried to come into this job because there were not very many females when I started.
When you started 22 years ago, how many were there?
I remember
roughly.
Maybe Trudy is one that I really remember working the streets, and I remember her being one of the only ones out there. But
mm-hmm.
there were a few others, but they were in more administrative positions. Yeah. But if I had to guess, probably 10 would be a max number.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know how many we have now, but I feel like there are quite a few more.
Well, and I was going to say, at this point, so 22 years later, we've really only doubled that because I think we're around 20-ish. And we've recently had some more. I think we got close to 30 at one point, and then a lot of them retired. They were in administrative roles as well and recently retired. So I think we're hovering around the 20 mark currently, which you'd think it would have grown a lot quicker.
Yeah, maybe it's because there's more work in the streets now than what there were then.
Sure.
But I think we have more.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your history in your 22 years. How did it start and lead up to where you're at now?
So South Sector was my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed working South Sector. Once I got about 5 years on, there was a opportunity to transfer into another female's position who was transferring out, which would have been the narcotics evidence custodian position. It was a position for sworn law enforcement. And I just remember thinking, well, I like working dope.
Mm-hmm.
I like narcotics. Maybe it's a way. They said that a position in that unit never came open. I had done a rotation through that unit on officer training,
mm-hmm.
and I really liked it. And so I just kind of thought, I'll see if I can get my foot in the door back there. So I was fortunate enough to put in for that, selected for that position, and that really gave me the opportunity to start reading, because you get every piece of drug evidence from city and county.
Wow.
Since it is a joint task force. So I got to like learn about all the different types of narcotics and then read all the different cases, that came in and how these narcotics were seized, and got to know the guys that were working in the unit. And then once position opened up, it was actually the diversion, which was prescription forgery, fraud. So I slid over into that position, and that really got me familiarized with a whole nother world. And a lot of the guys don't like to work that because it's a lot of paperwork involved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of video pulling, and at that time, prescription drugs were starting to really become a problem. That's, that's when people were trying to, do all the forged prescriptions for the opioids and get it that way. And then it became that, they needed, as our unit got smaller when COVID hit and the struggles were going, they asked me to start taking on more of the hard drug cases. And so I did, and I enjoyed that. So I did that, dabbled in everything from meth, cocaine, heroin, while still keeping up my prescription cases, because some of the stuff we were able to do as far as the prescription cases, the doctors changed a lot of things to electronically for the Schedule II narcotics. And so that cut back on my caseload on that end, just the community working together and changing those laws, and it gave me more time to work the other cases. Wow.
And then you were promoted to sergeant.
January 1st of this year.
January 1st. I was told to ask by current assistant chief who your favorite supervisor was in the narcotics unit.
I feel like this is set up to say Nathan Haslett.
I mean, whether that's true or not, that is who asked the question. He said, you should ask her this. So whether it's true or not, I'm sure you've worked.
The way that played out, I don't think I ever saw that as an option. And I got the best of both worlds.
You becoming a sergeant or having him as a sergeant?
Being able to stay the sergeant back there.
Yeah. So in total, how many years have you worked in narcotics then?
11. Coming up my 11th year.
So half your career then?
Oh yeah, over half.
Okay.
I would probably say, I'm trying to remember the transfer date, and I don't remember that. But I do think that I initially went back there 5 years on, so actually no, it's probably more than like 15, 16.
Wow. Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking about all the times when I would work the street or during the police academy, how many times I heard you be called in to search a female. Yeah. If you could put a number to it, and this is putting you on the spot even more, how many females do you think you've had to search in your career?
In my career?
I mean, thousands.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, this is one of the things that gets asked on the stand.
Oh, really?
If narcotics are located on a female, that's the defense attorney will ask. Will ask that, like, through your experience, what do you mean by that? Well, I mean, if there are sometimes on a traffic stop you search for females,
right?
But I was like, probably in the 10,000s.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, and it just becomes by my experience, by my training and experience.
Yeah. What do you think has been the easiest part of being in the narcotics unit? What just comes easier to you?
Honestly, I think having sympathy for the families of the people that we deal with. The stereotype of an addict came from a broken home or from bad parents, or that, they were raised that way. And it's not true, especially in today's society with addiction. It's just not true. And so I am empathetic towards the family.
Yeah. What do you think is the hardest part of being involved in the narcotics unit?
Again, the families.
Yeah.
There are so many good families who have been torn apart by addiction. It's sad.
It is sad. And, there's so many different recovery groups and places that you could seek help here in Evansville. And it's unfortunate what that can do to families and children and parents involved.
Awful. It took me a long time to understand from woman to woman, and I have children, and of talking to addicts and wanting to say the typical, you chose drugs over your own children. And it took me a long time to understand the mindset that in that moment, that addict is not making that choice. To them, they're making the choice to live or die, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it has taken me a long time. And a lot of that, I think, comes with age and from talking to people.
Yeah. Well, and you have to be a good communicator in that job, too, because there are so many times that you guys are able to get into homes just by talking to people, or being able to search a vehicle by having a good relationship with people in the community. And, you know, narcotics is something that's always around.
Yes.
Always around. What are you guys seeing the most of right now?
You know, I would like to tell you that, I mean, it goes through spurts from, you know, somebody emailed me the other day when we put out a memo about an arrest that we had made, and they said, I have not seen cocaine for so long. And I was like, you know, it's making a comeback. And it's crazy that it has made a comeback as a social.
Oh, really?
As a social drug, you know. And, you know, and they responded, I guess crack is back. And I was like, I should have put that in my subject line, but you're exactly right. So, you know, the amount of used to, and this is what we giggle about, you know, used to, whenever we got a pound of meth, it was like everybody wanted to see it. It was insane, you know, or whatever. And then now it's like, oh, yeah, they got a pound. You know, now it's, oh, well, we seized 20 pounds. Right. You know, so it's just amazing the way that the quantity of the amount of drugs that are in our city. But I don't think it's just here. I think it's everywhere.
Yeah, and talking about meth, used to, before I came on the department, so I'd say, I've been on for 9 years, but 15, 20 years ago, one-pot meth labs were really popular. And I've experienced that maybe once or twice in my career. So can you talk about the transition from people making it locally versus it coming in from other places?
So I personally have never been Clan Lab certified. I'm very grateful that I've never had to do that certification.
What does Clan Lab mean?
So that is like, if Brock Hensley is listening, he's going to kill me. That's like a clandestine, like lab at home, like what you're talking about, like a one-pot method type thing. I have been on a couple of the scenes where we were having them and the homes blew up. But other than that, at that time, they were so big that we had a meth suppression unit specifically designed to work that, because, you know, it was necessary. Yeah. And there were times that those guys were working, you know, 20 of 24 hours a day battling that. But once the price of crystal went down so low, people were able to just purchase it and didn't have to worry. That, along with pharmacies and getting involved in, you know, the pseudo, you know, when we go and purchase pseudo and we feel like a criminal.
Right. Yeah. Show me like your
that.
ID.
Yes.
That is why, people. That's why they ask for your ID.
Yes. You know, and somebody asked me, like, if we, like, so now that Clan Labs aren't a thing, you know, do we still need to regulate ephedrine? You know, and I don't know, because if we change that back, you know, and if people find it easier, you know, if you only have to worry about yourself telling on you if you're making your own and using your own. Right. But basically that's what happened. The crystal meth became so easily affordable, so to speak, as opposed to trying to get enough pseudo to crush it down to make your, you know, to make your lab.
And I always, people ask me, what can we do about the drugs in Evansville, or why are there so many drugs in Evansville? And really, something that I've always said, and I think I took this from somebody in your unit from the academy, is that Evansville is so centrally located between the larger cities.
Absolutely.
So St. Louis, Indianapolis, Louisville, and Nashville, we're like the central hub for all of those.
Absolutely.
So do you think that's a big factor of why we get drugs in Evansville?
I do think that that's a big factor. I also don't think that it's just Evansville.
Sure, no.
You know, working with, you know, we have the opportunity to work with a lot of TFOs who are from adjacent counties.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere.
Right.
It's everywhere. We just do the best we can to combat the problem here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And talking about that, if somebody were to locate drugs or needles, what could they do, or how can they report that?
That would be as simple as a 911 call for a found property.
And a lot of people say, well, 911, I don't feel like it's appropriate to call 911 for something so small, but that's the way that that's how we recover evidence, or how we recover property. And so you just call 911 and say, hey, I've found this, I'll stay by it so nobody else can get stuck with the needle or pick up the whatever drug I found. And then also reporting tips for narcotics. We have the anonymous tip line at 812-435-6194. Do you recommend people to call that number if they have tips about narcotics?
Absolutely. Every day we get tips. And that dictates what our unit is going to do for that day. Yes.
So you guys follow up on those 100%.
Yes. It is so hard whenever, when you think about a unit of, a total maybe 15 to 18 of us on a day that everybody is present and there's not a trial going or, something taking them away or training. Those tips are sent out to all of us. They are also filtered to patrol officers who are interested in working narcotics. And now Sergeant Brewer has taken on some of the more lower scale, maybe heavy traffic, in and out, something like that, community stuff. And they are starting to assist. So I think that's why we are seeing so much more. Because when you're trying to work on, we had talked earlier, we don't really physically see a whole lot of fentanyl because an addict might have 1/10 of a gram, 1/2 of a gram. But to get to those large amounts takes a lot of work, a lot of stair-stepping to get to the bigger fish. And the amount of paperwork and time commitment that goes into that with the other units in patrol assisting with, knock and talks and getting out there, I think that has been really beneficial.
Well, in thinking about the things that I've noticed the narcotics unit do just since I've been here, like Cliff Simpson, Gergen, they've done some nationwide drug investigations and have been rewarded at the national level for their work. And so I think that speaks volumes of our narcotics unit. Are there any stories that you could think of or awards that you can think of that your unit has won or has been noticed for?
The day that I received my promotion, there were a couple guys in the unit who were given the Lifesaver Award. So I am really proud of that. And then, I received the Howard Davis Award.
You did.
Yes,
you
I know.
did.
I feel bad for speaking about myself, but
you were the peer award winner at the policeman's ball. And you were dressed for success too. 1980s prom.
That's right. That's my era. For the guys in my unit who now work with me and for me, I'm sure there are probably maybe some regrets in that.
No, it was a fun night and you deserved it. So
I was very proud.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's cool to see your family too, especially, your dad being able to see you shine and do what you love and that you kind of followed in his footsteps in a sense. And did he ever work narcotics?
No, my dad was a road deputy for forever.
Through and through.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So merging into THC and weed, just really briefly, we're seeing the states surrounding us legalizing marijuana. And so in Indiana, that's still illegal.
Absolutely.
And so if somebody were to go down 64, purchase some sort of THC, marijuana weed from the gas station and bring it back into Indiana, what could happen to them?
They still are in violation. Marijuana is still illegal here, and our laws in our state will apply. You can be arrested or cited.
So it doesn't matter if you bought it legally somewhere, you're transporting it into a state where it's still illegal, and you can be, written a ticket or taken to jail for it, depending on how much it is.
Correct.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So you had mentioned right now we're currently seeing cocaine coming through.
Yeah.
More so than...
We've had a lot. We have a lot of meth as well. And fentanyl is becoming the big thing. And the cocaine lately has had fentanyl in it. So it's just...
Well, and you guys are cracking down, too. I feel like in the past couple years, or past year, really, we've noticed people being charged with, I don't know what the actual charge is, but basically killing somebody by selling them fentanyl.
Overdose causing death.
Yes. That's been something that's very common. And so that's something that your unit's pursuing and the prosecutor's office is pursuing. What does that case kind of look like, or what can you...
So right now, that is being worked more by AIU.
Okay.
However, there have been a few of us who do that, and the reason I believe behind that takes a lot of work. That's where I really got to know. I've worked on them still currently. I have one that's when you really get to know the family. And
Yeah.
the family wants someone held accountable.
Sure.
And in one of the cases that I did, I spoke to the family of the suspect as well. And I tried to explain to them, I understand that the addict made a choice
Right.
to consume.
Mm-hmm.
I do. And if they were here, I would charge them with possession of that drug.
Mm-hmm.
However, they're not. So if we can't catch, we talked earlier about trying to locate a 1/10 of a gram or a gram of fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference between stopping somebody who's got, 30 grams of meth on him. It's
Right.
obviously easier to find, easier to locate, easier
Mm-hmm.
to charge. But to get to that big fish, it's hard
Mm-hmm.
just from going through, addicts, and to get to the level of the amount of fentanyl that you need
Yeah.
to actually hold someone accountable and put them in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can't get to them that way, but we can get to them by charging an overdose causing death
Mm-hmm.
and send, and hold them liable that way,
Right.
then that's what we'll try to do. And so we've tried to start now assisting with AIU.
Yeah.
I tell the families immediately, the stars have to line perfectly.
Yeah.
There is so much paperwork that has to come into place and so many variants and factors.
Yeah.
The chances of that charge actually happening for the amount of overdoses, I would say probably 3%.
Wow.
Yeah, because it is very difficult
Mm-hmm.
to prove.
Yeah. Well, hopefully for those cases that do go forward, that will provide some closure to those families. And the fact that, whoever they lost, their death is being investigated, means
Right.
something to them as well.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all the time that we have. So thank you for being on the show.
Not a problem.
Thank you for tuning in to the What's Your 20 podcast. You can tune in again on September 28th to hear from Special Operations Commander Captain Jason Thomas. Make sure to subscribe and follow our Spotify and YouTube accounts to stay up to date on all podcast releases. Have a good weekend.